This weekend was certainly disappointing on the hardwood inside Cameron Indoor Stadium. After defeating Pitt on the road, the Panthers come to Cameron Indoor Stadium, upset Duke. Let's talk about it.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's great to have you here with us on this Monday, January 22nd, 2024. Today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, we're going to be talking about the disappointing loss that Duke had over the weekend at home against the Pittsburgh Panthers. After defeating Pitt by 22 points at their place, Jeff Capel brings his team into Cameron Indoor, and they upset the Blue Devils on Saturday night. We'll discuss that game with our good friend Jordan Mann from the Big J and Little J show at Coach J Man on Twitter, and we'll have a really fun conversation with him. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Also, make sure that you check us out on YouTube. Watch our show each and every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Comment on the videos. I love the discourse and interactions that are had on our YouTube platform. And again, your support means so much to us here. We're climbing towards 2,000 subscribers, and now is the perfect time to join that Locked On Blue Devils family. So without further ado, let's bring them on in. The aforementioned Jordan Mann, who joins me here on the program today. We've been really used to winning ways, Jordan. 8 wins in a row for Duke. That goes over about a month stretch. Not used to this feeling. Don't necessarily love it at all. But nonetheless, we got to talk about it. How are you today, man?
I'm doing good. I know it's a loss, but as we'll dive into it, JJ, I think it's not the end of the world for Duke fans. I know you never want to see Duke lose, especially a conference game at home. But look, context matters, man, and that's what we're going to deep dive into today.
No doubt about that. Let's talk about this game for the Duke Blue Devils. And I think when you talk about this game, as we were talking about all throughout last week, Duke had a full week layoff with no game in the midweek. That's the only time this season that will happen in ACC play. And the whole conversation last week was the health of Mark Mitchell and Jeremy Roach. Are those guys going to play? Very early in the week, Brendan Marks of The Athletic was on this show, and other folks around the program saying, look, might be a little tough this week without those guys playing. And of course, Duke is quiet throughout the entire week. Next thing you know, of course, we hear as game time approaches that both Mark Mitchell and Jeremy Roach, in fact, would not play for the Duke basketball team on Saturday against Pitt. And it's hard to say that you don't want to just point it to injuries and that sort of thing, Jordan. But look, that had a major impact on this Duke basketball team.
Yeah, I mean, injuries are a real thing. Like, that's where the context matters. Like, Jeremy Roach is an all ACC guard. He's been the most reliable player for Duke this year. When you lose 15 points per game, that shoots 50% from the field, 45 from three, and oh, by the way, 86% from the line when you need those free throws down the stretch by a veteran, like, that's massive in a close game like this. And then Mark Mitchell, like, I know his three-point shooting is what it is, but he still averaged 12 points per game on 50% shooting this year, JJ. And not to mention, he's arguably Duke's best defender who can guard 1 through 5. Like, he's reliable. I mean, we'll dive into it, but like Blake Henson last game against Duke, when Duke blew him out, he only had 9 points on 3 of 7 shooting from 3 because Duke did a really good job of keying in on him. And Mark Mitchell, he only played 21 minutes that game, but he was still plus 21 on the field. And that just shows, like, his plus minus, you don't need to score the ball. He had 4 points, but it's plus 21 because he does all the little things well. And that's what Duke missed with him not being there, just like the Georgia Tech win. Like, he does so many things that don't show up in box scores. And context matters because at the end of the day, JJ, if you take Armando Bacot and RJ Davis out against UNC against Pittsburgh, they're going to lose that game. And this is a talented team. And I would say this with that real quick. UNC beat Pittsburgh, but it was a 6-point game with 4:25 left to go. And Blake Henson had 11 points on 4 of 16, 2 of 11 from 3. So that's a full talented UNC is the most talented team in the ACC. They're on the ropes at Pittsburgh, only up 6 points with 4 minutes left. And Blake Henson could not hit the broadside of a barn. Henson shoots lights out like he did against Duke. they upset UNC. Like, this is a good team that's individually talented. They just play – they don't play good as a whole. They have good individual players, and one of them just got hot and had a perfect night, and that's what beat Duke.
Yeah, meanwhile, when you look at what Duke was able to do against Pitt at Pitt with a full squad, it's not a competitive basketball game. Again, Duke wins by 22 points, and Blake Hinson was efficient. He was 3 of 7 from three-point range in that game against Duke earlier in the season. But the numbers again, Blake Hinson was 7 for 7 from three-point range against the Duke Blue Devils, 8 of 10 from the floor, 24 points and 8 rebounds. He played 37 of 40 minutes in the basketball game for the Panthers. It's the image that's going all across the college basketball world right now as the game goes final. The scoreboard hits zeros left in the clock. Blake Hinson goes and jumps on the table in front of the Cameron Crazies, had a few words to say for them, and I guess rightfully so, man. He was the best player on the floor throughout the course of the game, but that's something I know that doesn't necessarily sit well with the Duke basketball team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, if it's not Duke basketball, if it's any other school in the country and an opposing player does that, then he's getting ridiculed. But since it's at Cameron, everybody hates Duke. It's a cool moment. But, I mean, look, I was not happy with it. I mean, most people – who would be? Like, imagine if Austin Rivers hit the game-winning 3 at UNC and went to the scores table and stood up on there and was like, this is my house. You know, he would have been killed. Like, he would have been killed on Franklin Street. And so, but since it's Duke – it's look at this great moment. Yeah, screw Duke, blah, blah, blah. But it was disappointing. And I know Capel, like when they were walking back to the locker room, him and Henson were having some words. So Capel wasn't happy. But I wish like it would have been reprimanded, like getting him off the table immediately and not letting him have that moment.
Big moment for him and a big moment for Pitt. They're now 11-7 on the season. They are still one of the worst teams in the ACC. Per KenPom, they had a 1% chance of making the NCAA tournament going into the game on Saturday. They now have a 3.4% chance. So it's not this massive jump for Pitt in the win that they had. Although when you look at some of those formulas like quad 1 wins and that sort of thing, the win now does boost Duke's win on the road there as a quad 1 victory. So a lot of moving parts still, and it's hard to keep up with it all right now, man.
It's a great spin zone right there. Yeah, they lost to Pittsburgh, helped Duke's overall KenPom. Yeah. There we go. Like good spin zone. But yeah, one quick thing too about Blake Hinson that people they're not familiar with. The dude is he's a volume scorer. Like I talked about his struggles against UNC, and then he got hot against Duke. But another team that lost over the weekend, JJ, was Kansas. They lost to West Virginia at West Virginia. Blake Hinson had 29 on 10 of 19, 9 of 15 from 3, and a 17-point win against West Virginia. So, like, when he's hot, Pittsburgh can beat anybody. And that's just kind of college basketball this year, it seems like. Like, it's so unpredictable, and Blake Hinson is the face of this unpredictability in college basketball.
Yeah, no unbeatens on the season. Several teams have held on to that number 1 spot in the sport, and still plenty of time to make up where you want to be. Duke, of course, returns back to action against Louisville on the road tomorrow. More on that game coming up a little bit later, but we've got more to talk about. We've got to be able to discuss what exactly went wrong for the Duke team. How about the offensive side of things for the Blue Devils? And we'll have that conversation after we take our first break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We're in the heart of the NFL playoffs. Conference championship weekend is set, and there's still time for you to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And again, that's guaranteed. I'm always tempted to say that like Charles Barkley. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore Hub, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, and so much more. So go ahead and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel is, of course, a proud sponsor of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. Let's move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside Jordan Mann from the Big J and Little J Show at Coach J Man on Twitter. Take a moment, if you will, Jordan, and plug some of your work.
Yeah, so Big J and Little J Show, we will be recording tomorrow, and we'll be recapping this game as well, and even more of a deep dive with analytics and stuff, and then previewing Louisville, the rest of the season looking like for Duke. And Big J and Little J show with that. And we're going to start up a YouTube channel here coming in a few days and in about a week or so. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it.
Go check out all the work. It's a lot of good conversations. You do it with Connor O'Neill, who we talk with quite frequently on this program. And so go support that awesome show that you got going over there. So as you talk about what went wrong for the Duke basketball team on Saturday, looking at the offensive side of things, I know you've got a lot of thoughts. I know that your colleague Connor O'Neill put together an entire story about shot selection with the Duke basketball team. So let's kind of dive into it, Jordan. Where do you want to start when you look at Duke's loss?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, look, the sophomores, like that's where I really want to deep dive into is like Filipowski and Tyrese Proctor. Like they just need to step up more. Like they just need to be consistent. Like that's just the one thing with this Duke team that has been the problem so far this year is the inconsistencies. And it's been by the guys that are the sophomores to lead the team. I mean, we talked about Mark Mitchell's struggles. Now, Tyrese Proctor, we talked about a little bit last show that I was on. And Filipowski, I mean, he shoots well against Pitt. Yes, he had 19 on 5 of 10, 3 of 6 from 3, but like he had 5 turnovers, and he's just not – if it's not a three-point shot, JJ, I don't feel great with him around the rim just because it feels like every shot's contested and like Connor said, shot selection. And Proctor was 3 of 10, man. Like he doesn't look good for the stat I gave you last week on the show about his free throws. He did – shoot 5, and he's more efficient when he shoots 2 or more or 3 or more. But that also came down the stretch where he got fouled on the 3, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But just those guys, I would like to see them more of takeover mode when Jeremy Roach goes down. Like, who's going to step up? And it has to be those 2 guys. Those are the 2 leaders.
Filipowski, 5 of 10 from the floor, 3 of 6 from three-point range. Tyrese Proctor was 3 of 10 from the floor, 2 of 5, 11 points for Proctor, 19 for Filipowski. Caleb Foster had 16. Jared McCain had 20. When those 2 guys are out, you wonder who's going to slide in to the starting lineup. It was Jalen Blakes who gets the nod, but Blakes had 13 minutes out on the floor, did not attempt a shot. And yet again, it seems like that depth of the Duke basketball team is kind of hurting them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's where the 2 starters being out is the context that matters because this Duke team only plays 7 guys really consistently, and that's Ryan Young, and then Jalen Blake's off the bench with Mark Mitchell, Jeremy Roach playing. So you take 2 of those guys out, you slide in Blake's. Ryan Young plays his, 26 minutes last night or last game, and Blake's played 13, but you're just going to lose that production. I mean, when you have Blake starting with 13 minutes and had 2 points, like to substitute a guy of Roach that's averaging 15, it's a big drop off. Like Blake's is a role player, and he had to fill a role. And I know Shire said after the game, like it was coach speak, like put the loss on him. They had to find a way to win. But at the end of the day, like he's got to say that. But in reality, you're missing that much production. It's just bound to happen. Like it's okay to have a thin bench. Teams win national championships with only playing 7, 8 guys. You don't have to play 10, but Duke just got exposed with their lack of depth.
Yeah, we saw Sean Stewart a little bit more time out there on the floor. 11 minutes for Stewart, 4 for TJ Power. Stewart grabbed 2 rebounds. He also did not take a shot from the floor. And TJ Power was out there for 4 minutes, 1 of 3, including a lay-in, 0 for 2 from three-point range. That was his first 2-point basket of the entire season. So got to find a way to get a little bit more balanced scoring off of the bench for the Duke basketball team. And that will help when you get guys like Mark Mitchell and Jeremy Roach back because they can go back into the starting spot. You can bring someone like McCain or Foster off like there are just more options that you have when not all of these players are being forced to start.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and speaking of a guy that has been started off the bench at the start of the year, Caleb Foster had a great game for Duke. I mean, he had 16, 6 rebounds and 5 assists and 3 steals and 1 turnover. Like that's
a full game. Yeah.
That's an insane stat line. And he always seems to get lost in the stat sheet when we talk, like when he plays well. He's still not one of the 2 guys we talk about. It seems like it's either Flip, Roach, or McCain, and rightfully so for those guys. But Foster, man, is just he is level-headed, really good guard play. And, yeah, I was very proud of Foster and McCain. Like the 2 freshmen, I mean, he had 20 and 16 by those 2 guys. Like it's frustrating. It's a frustrating loss, but at the end of the day, JJ, it's not the end of the world to me. Like I know it's a home loss in January, a conference home loss, but context matters, and I'm not going to lose sweat. I still have confidence Duke against UNC. I think UNC, people want to write that off as UNC is a really good team, but may introduce you to Coach K's last year on senior night, where everybody thought Duke was going to walk all over UNC, and UNC upset Duke and Cameron. So never say never in this rivalry.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And still a little bit of time until we get to that game. Of course, we've got Louisville tomorrow, Clemson this upcoming weekend, and still a ways to go until we get that contest against North Carolina. But I know that we're eager for that opportunity with the Duke basketball team trying to bounce back from that loss. We'll talk about some injury updates to Mark Mitchell and Jeremy Roach in just a moment, but do want to also talk about Jared McCain's performance a little bit more. As you mentioned, 20 points for the freshman Jared McCain. He played the most minutes of this Duke team, 38 minutes out there on the floor, 7 of 14, 3 of 8 from three-point range. So again, his marksman ability was there. He also made a couple of really strong drives and finishes in that second half as Duke is trying to climb back into it. And he's just a scorer, man. And I was really glad after he had a very quiet game in the close victory over Georgia Tech last week, he came back and really scored the ball well on Saturday against Pitt.
Oh, yeah, double figures in shot attempts. That's the key, baby. 7 of 14 and 3 of 8 from 3, but one of those shouldn't really count. It's the end of the game. Duke's down 4. He chucks one up from about 35 feet and misses. So, 20 points. I would like to see him have more than one rebound and one assist. Like with Duke being down a couple of guys like Mark Mitchell, him crashing the glass would have been a little bit better to see, but that's me nitpicking at a box score, JJ. He played great all around for me. And the one thing I want to talk about real quick before we go to break, JJ, is the end of the game. So I didn't like at the end of the game, Tyrese Proctor missed his third free throw when he got fouled on the 3. Like he forcefully missed it to try and get offense rebound because Pitt was sketchy from the line all game. They were 10 of 16. And there's 4 seconds left. It would have made it a 79-77 game. And you still play the free throw game. You still foul. Blake Henson gets fouled, makes the first, misses the second. So if he would have made this third free throw, we're looking at 80-77 with 4 seconds left, and you can get a shot up. Instead, you force that miss. Blake Henson goes 1 of 2, but it's a 4-point game. Game's over. So I wish Duke would have tried to make that third free throw rather than try and force a miss like the Trey Jones situation at UNC. Just make that free throw, then play the foul game.
And that situation is so perfect, and we're so happy that we have that in our memory bank with Trey Jones' epic play against the Heels a few years ago. But to your point, that's so hard to pull off. Duke subs Ryan Young in. You're trying to get the automatic miss, and Tyrese Proctor throws it off the backboard. It hits no part of the rim, and that's a violation. Pitt gets to inbound it right there. But to your point, with 4.7 seconds remaining on the clock and Pitt set to inbound, if Proctor would have made that free throw, you still like Duke's chances of getting a foul in time. And look, if Pitt would have gone down, we're playing hypotheticals here, so maybe they do make 2 out of 2 free throws, and it's a 4-point game, and ultimately it doesn't matter. But I do agree with you. It would have been nice to just kind of see what possibilities could have been out there there at the end of the game for sure.
Yeah, that's just one little thing that I wanted to talk about because I was thinking about that during the game. I was like, I have to bring this up with JJ.
All right, let's take one more break, and then we'll start to wind down this episode of Locked On Blue Devils after this timeout here on the program today. Got to make sure we tell you about Locked On launching the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel. Check us out and support us over there. It's Locked On Sports Today. Also, make sure you go and listen to Locked On College Basketball. If you want more thoughts on Duke's performance, Isaac Shade and Andy Patton have been breaking down the games over there, so go check out their show. Jordan Mann is here with us today. Follow him on X at Coach J Man. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Duke loses to Pitt 80-76. It's the 4th loss of the season for the Blue Devils. Their 2nd loss in conference play. Another kind of team stat to look at with this Duke team in particular, that they've not been great at even in their wins, but it's more so obvious in games in which Duke loses. But yet again, Duke lost the rebounding battle, Jordan, 32-25. How can Duke kind of make up for this, improve from this, from your basketball and coaching experience? Like, what are the things you look for there? Because that has been something that we've talked about frequently when Duke loses these games is, well, look, they got beat on the boards.
Yeah, I mean, look, They got beat on the boards, but the reason why they got beat on the boards is because Pitt didn't miss. Like, that's just Pitt shot 51% from the field and 50% from three. So that's one reason how you get out rebound. You only have 25 total rebounds and 21 defensive rebounds is because you're not stopping them from scoring. And that's where the issue was in that game. If Pitt would have shot, 40%, and I mean, it's also not great. They shot 51% from the field. They had 9 offensive rebounds. That's not good because that means they're not missing. And when they do miss, they're getting the offensive rebounds. That's not good. When they have half offensive rebounds to your defense rebounds, Duke had 21 defense rebounds. That's not good. So it's just gang rebounding. Like I talked about McCain's stat line, he had 1 rebound. Filipowski had 5 rebounds, Proctor had 5, and Caleb Foster led the team with 6. So everybody else had 1, 0, 2, 1, 2. So 3 guys had 5 or more rebounds. All 5 guys got to get at least 4 rebounds. So McCain has to have 4 or 5 rebounds in there. And then Ryan Young had 4 rebounds, so off the bench, but Jalen Blakes didn't have a rebound. It's gang rebounding. That's all it is. In a long-winded way, JJ, gang rebounding.
Got to find a way to improve there, and we'll see if Duke's able to do that. So talking about next up for this Duke team, they've got Louisville on Tuesday. That's a road game for the Blue Devils. And then this upcoming Saturday, a big game against Clemson, who is one of the hottest teams in the conference to open up the season. They have definitely tailed off a bit, but still going to be a tough opponent for Duke this week. On the ACC teleconference today, Jon Scheyer talked about the opportunity for both Jeremy Roach and Mark Mitchell to play and said that both guys needed to practice first. So did not know if the guys would be able to make it through Monday's practice, but it appears as though that's going to be the indicator as to whether or not they play, Jordan. If they practice, a much better shot for them to truly be a game-time decision. But if the guys are not able to go through a practice, I guess I do kind of agree with the decision to hold them out for another game. Again, this is a Louisville team that's not good. Only 6 wins on the year for the Cardinals. Duke has got to win this game regardless of who's available. But there's kind of the injury updates there for Jeremy Roach and Mark Mitchell. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, it's kind of giving me PTSD from the fall, JJ, with Riley Leonard's injury problems, his ankle sprain, and then Elko got him back for the Louisville game, and then he re-aggravated and got turf toe and missed the rest of the season. What I'm saying is, if they're not 100% healthy at Louisville, sit this out because you have the rest of the season to play for. So if Roach and Mitchell, I mean, they're 2 different injuries. So if one's 85%, maybe you can play him in a restricted minute basis. So they're both 85% restricted minute basis. But if they're anything less than that, then sit them. And Duke can play against Louisville. It might be a grinder of a game in the first half, might look ugly, but Duke can squeak out a road win against Louisville with the roster they have right now. And I would expect Stewart to get a lot more minutes against Louisville. That's just based off of how he played in his 11 minutes or whatever he played against Pittsburgh. He looked pretty solid. So if Mitchell can't go, Roach can't go, if you're looking to give minutes somewhere else, I think Stewart deserves those. But yes, rest of those guys are not 100% healthy or 85% healthy because I witnessed Riley Leonard get hurt at Louisville and miss the rest of the season for Duke football. So rest.
It's just not worth it with a game like this and a lot more that you want to accomplish with this basketball team. If they're not ready to go, knee sprains are pretty severe. So make sure that you are absolutely comfortable putting those guys out there on the floor. And we're not telling Jon Scheyer and the Duke training staff anything that they don't already know, Jordan, right? But just more so kind of the fan line of thinking here that when you're looking at a game like Louisville, ESPN analytics right now give Duke a 94.1% chance to win this basketball game. Louisville 6-12 overall on the season. It has been an awful tenure for Kenny Payne at the head coaching spot there. So I think you got to wait until you know for sure that these guys are absolutely good to go, which is why I'd be pleasantly surprised at this point if we see them out there on the floor. And the consensus inside the program is also of that it's more likely Jeremy Roach is to return before you see Mark Mitchell back out there.
Yeah, if we can get one of the two back, that'd be great because that just gives you more reliability. And Louisville, yeah, they're 6-12, but they did beat Miami, and this ACC season has made no sense so far. So that is just an interesting tidbit. But yeah, if Roach can get back, that'd be great. Mitchell, if either of them could just be a game time decision, like you said, they have the private conversations that we have no idea what they're talking about, and we will truly never know until the game time, and then we'll see who's playing or not. And I trust the medical staff and Shire to make the right decision.
Duke 4-2 in the ACC. Louisville is 1-6. So Duke still wants to chase that regular season title. North Carolina has yet to lose a conference game, so you've got some work to do. But, of course, we still believe what this Duke team is capable of. So, with that being said, Jordan, do you think Duke kind of can get back to the winning ways tomorrow night? All in all, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I feel good. I feel like the message was well received by Shire and Filipowski's post-game comments about Henson's celebration. I think that really riled up this Duke team to where they're going to really come together and put on a performance at Louisville.
Excited to see what happens. We, of course, will have another preview tomorrow, and we'll recap the game on Wednesday for you here on Locked On Blue Devils. One more time, if you will, Jordan, tell us about the Big J and Little J show.
Yeah, Big J and Little J shows where you can find Connor and I having takes and diagnosing Duke basketball right now through March, and then spring ball for football start in April. And then we'll have a little mix of both until the fall. We'll go back to Duke football. So looking forward to more Duke content. I always love coming on here to talk about Duke. And, yeah, my life apparently evolves around Duke athletics, JJ.
I'm right there with you. It's a good problem and a good thing. It's not even a problem. It's a great position to be in. So, Jordan, it's always a pleasure having you here each and every week. We'll see you again next week, okay?
Appreciate it as always, brother.
All right, that's Jordan Mann joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to wrap up our show here today. Thank you always for your support of the program. Once again, please make sure that you check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. Your support means so much to us. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.